but you don't get to hear that
unless
you're on our Patreon. Maybe, I don't know.
We could put stuff on there. We should put things on there.
I agree. Putting things on our Patreon, you say,
to incentivize.
Hi, and welcome to the Inner Moxie podcast, a podcast about not one but two neurodivergent adults trying to live their best lives on the Neuro D list and not hate themselves in the process. I'm your host, Ron.
And I'm Zanny.
And this week, we are going to be talking about disclosing your neurodiversity.
Ding. All right. It is Inner Moxie meter time. Where do you stand there?
I am going to go for this week on a 5-point scale. I am going to go for a 4. I'm feeling pretty good.
Wow. 80%, huh?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
No, it is. Let me tell you. I could do small order percentages.
Oh, you should start a math podcast.
Oh, it's over already if we're doing that.
No, I'm feeling pretty good. Bad stuff, house stuff notwithstanding. I think I've mentioned this before, but I've been a little vague about it. But I have everything's all official now. I am officially going to be recording, and live streaming the Burlesque Hall of Fame Weekender in Las Vegas, Nevada. It is a thing I have done for the past decade at least, and it has been a very formative. I hesitate to call it a job. It's certainly a job, but it's been a very formative gig, and certainly I wouldn't be the person I am today had I not become associated with doing this however many odd years ago. Just because, I'm going to do a little pushing here, but if you're ever in Las Vegas, the Burlesque Hall of Fame is an amazing museum that is keeping up the past, present, and future of the art of burlesque. It is also amazingly, it's an amazingly feminist, it's amazingly pro-sex, it's amazingly pro-LGBTQ, pro-queer. It's an amazing place. It's kind of, and the Weekender is a big show that they throw every year. That is 3 nights of the greatest names in burlesque from the past, present, and future. But even like they have a Legends night, which I end up crying halfway through while I'm trying to like live edit the whole show. There's tears in my eyes. I'm like, click camera. But it is like just these amazing people from like even like so far back, like the 50s. And like there's people, I think, like even up to in their 90s doing these performances still out there, and just the crowd losing their mind with the most absolutely respect for these people that have been through all of this and are such a huge part of history. And then also to see the best people in the world doing it today and all of the kind of creativity they're bringing to it, all of the classicness that they still manage to keep in it, without those factions warring, and kind of like the new up and comers that, that we're going to see for the next however many odd years. It's a beautiful, amazing thing. I'm still getting it all together. And so, but yeah, I'm feeling really good about that. I'm optimistic not optimistic. I know I will get it together, everything together, by the time to go. And it's just, it's also, it is a gig, so it'll help me out with some stuff. And yeah, I love doing it, and it helps keep me, and it helps remind me of kind of
unmuffled cars.
Yeah. It helps remind me of the things I want and that I think can be that out of this world. Like I think that this world can be. And so, yeah, I'm I'm kind of in that right now. So like things aren't perfect, not a 5. But I'm feeling pretty good. I'm optimistic. Yeah. How's your Moxie meter going?
Nice. Well, congrats on your
Thank you.
gig. I'm glad it has brought a little light into an annoying time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a 0 to 10 kind of scale person. I would say 9.75. I'm pretty damn close to perfect. Just kidding. You
don't have to be kidding.
I know. I mean, there's always room for improvement. I just had the reason why. Okay, yes, I went to this festival and it was amazing. Because I hate festivals just because of you know, dirt and drunk people and sweat, and I didn't have to deal with most of that, so that was nice. Yes. But I mean, the reason why it was so great, like, yes, I saw all this stuff. It was great to just go and have fun. Like, I feel regenerated, if that makes sense.
I've heard that girls just want to do that.
Have fun, yeah. Oh, you were waiting on that joke.
No,
for me to stop talking. No, you were.
Yeah, that part, yeah. Shut up. I
have a joke.
You could have been like, oh, hey, your mom just called. Your dad died. And I was like, girls just want to have fun.
And what?
What?
Yeah, so that feels good. I also got to see what they called a like an open rehearsal, but I got to see Weezer at the observatory, but not in the big room, at this tiny little stage with 200 of my closest friends that I don't know.
Observatory is LA, right?
No, it's Orange County, Santa Ana.
Oh, yes, it totally is. So when did you? Because
last night.
Oh, wow. So you got back from...
Had a lot of music this weekend.
Yeah. You got not Brave New World. I always want to call it...
Sick New World.
Sick New World.
Metal Festival.
Metal Festival.
Baby Metal does it like this, not like this.
I love Baby Metal.
Baby Metal was there. Baby Metal was great. Baby Metal came out with Bring Me the Horizon, which was fucking great.
I wanted to go see Baby Metal. They were playing with Death Clock. Are you familiar?
I love Death Clock. Shut up.
Yeah, but like I was like, oh, I go check that. But it was like, and first of all, awesome, because everyone I talk to about Death Clock, nobody knows about Death Clock.
I know it from
Metalocalypse.
Thank you, Guitar Hero.
But yeah, like the ticket, even the cheap seats were like $100, and I was like, oh, I can't do that for this band.
That's life these days.
Yeah.
They came out and they did a collab with Bring Me the Horizon, so like they came out for that song and like did their dance, and then anyway, it was fun. It was super cool.
Yeah.
I forgot what we were saying.
You went to see Weezer.
Oh yeah, it was like they have a tour coming up, so this was like a secret kind of deal, but yeah.
Okay, so for question, this is specifically for Weezer. And I'm not the first to point this out. There tends to be two kinds of Weezer fans. The two that are like Blue Album and...
I'm Blue.
Oh, okay. I was going to say Blue Album.
Del Scorcho. But that's the other one you were going to say, right?
El Scorcho is the song on it.
Yes.
I can't remember the name of it for some reason. It's one of those things.
Yeah. I think it starts with an I.
I thought it started with a P.
You might be right. I don't know the alphabet.
Yes, but there's people that are those two albums ride or die, and there's people that have the whole collection.
I mean, I'm Blue Album, ride or die. They only played 2 songs off that album because I mean, this tour coming up, it's the 30th anniversary of the Blue Album, so it's going to be front to back in the tour. But
right,
it was cool. I mean, this
Pinkerton.
There you go, Pinkerton. You're right. It was super cool. We didn't actually get in the room because they kind of overbooked it, but like the sound was good. I could see it. Being in that, I mean, I was still basically like 10 people back. I mean, no smaller show could exist in my estimation for that band anyway. And I'm not the first to say this, but fellow ASD bro in Rivers Phoenix there. So
is he?
His name is Rivers Phoenix, right?
Yes.
I did not.
No. Rivers Cuomo.
That's right.
River Phoenix is who you're thinking of.
Yeah. No, that guy's dead.
Yeah.
My bad.
River.
Sorry, dead River.
Sorry.
Sorry, alive. Sorry, dead River.
And also, sorry to his brother Joaquin.
Yeah, but he's doing great. Seems
Yeah.
like. Yeah. So
was till you keep bringing up the death of his brother for no reason.
I love beating dead horses. It's my favorite pastime.
Fuck that dead horse.
Sorry, dead horse. I could never. Who does this? Okay. Nope. We were not going to tangent. We were going to keep it tight.
We can tangent a little.
Okay. So today, my friend came over and helped me like clean out my cat's ears because it's just really hard for me to do alone.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a treat, I gave everyone like a sardine. Like Trader Joe's has ones that are in water that are like the kind that are not harmfully caught. So I gave it, but there were just like vertebrae laying around my house today.
Ooh.
It felt like a weird tiny
Your cats
boneyard.
Didn't eat it?
No, they ate some of it, but like the vertebrae for 2 of them, it just got left, and I think everyone was full because I put that on top of like their regular meal, so they were like full. But it was making me feel sick, but it was also making me laugh because like there were these teeny tiny vertebrae hanging out like in my 2 cat food feeding areas, and I was a little too freaked out to touch it to clean it up. So I felt like I was in a fishy graveyard for this afternoon. It just made me laugh every time I would pass it and want to throw up also.
It makes me think of the elephant graveyard in The Lion King, but specifically in the video game. For me, Sega Genesis, I know you were an SNES person.
I am.
But that's what it makes me think of.
Yeah.
I can even hear like the 8-bit version of the song Be Prepared going on in my head right now.
Be prepared.
Speaking of tangents, I'll keep this as just a quick fun fact. Jeremy Irons did the voice of Scar, and he did the singing voice for Scar, but he blew out his voice, and he couldn't do the big "Be Prepared" at the end. So that was actually done by the
James
guy.
Earl Jones?
No. Oh. No. And don't interrupt me. No.
Oh, my bad. I already highlighted this last week.
No, it was done by Jim Cummings, who is Winnie the Pooh. Famously Winnie the Pooh, but also Darkwing Duck and so many of the Disney classic people. So if you like listen real hard to that final "Be Prepared," you can kind of hear the Winnie the Pooh-ness of it because it's him doing his best Jeremy Irons Scar impersonation.
I see. I didn't watch Winnie the Pooh much. But funny story. I am laughing.
Thank you.
Okay, tangent's over.
Right.
Okay, well, we are going to be discussing disclosing your neurotype today. So, I don't know about you, but the way that I kind of like went about it and looked into was, in the personal realm and then in the work world, because those are 2 separate things. In the work world one, you could kind of just like copy paste most of it and plug it into the school, because we're talking about adults, we don't need to get into the kid. Yeah. Type. So yeah, did you have anything that you prepared? Because I always come with stuff.
Yeah.
So.
No. I mean, like it's a little bit weird on my end because I am I work very insulated. I'm making efforts to expand and things like that. But yeah, so work-wise, like really after I got my diagnosis, I worked close with my good friend Mark, who I told about it the second I got it.
And who also subscribes to our YouTube. Thank you, Mark.
Yes, Mark Hampson. But also, as part of a film company called Brotherhood Pictures, which later is now Magic 35. But my Paul and Aaron also, I told them about it. But also, we didn't have a thing called Brotherhood Pictures because we were a bunch of strangers. We were very close. And so, yeah, like the other job I do is I train AI.
Do you tell the robots?
I don't, but I do ask the robots a surprising amount of question about neurodivergence in general. I try and overlap and use that as, if I'm going to be, doing research, I might as well be getting paid a little for it.
Yeah.
but yeah, so it's a weird position in that, I think disclosing that I have neurodiversity might have been important for this particular job.
Sure.
As co-host of a podcast about neurodiversity. But yeah, so it's a little weird on me. When I was working in an office environment, even when I was working more on sets, or doing the post thing, or had employees, I just didn't know, or I hadn't been re-diagnosed with it. So now most people I work with know about it, but that's because I work with people that are pretty close to me, so they know it from a personal standpoint.
Yeah.
Also, the work I tend to do now is a lot more personal, you know. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I brought lots of stuff. I'm not sharing about that stuff, but all that is going to come up in the things that I've prepared, because I love to be prepared. I wrote it this time versus typing because this helps me remember better.
Yeah, that was one of the big things. I used to bullet journal, and that was one of the big selling points of bullet journaling, was that you physically write it down. They said A, because it helps you remember, and then B, you'd get tired of writing the same task that you didn't do over and over again. So you'd eventually do it just so you could stop writing it.
I probably wouldn't get tired of that. I would just get used to writing that. And then I wouldn't even see it.
It's neurotypical as far as we know. My mom is. I don't know why I said that like Yoda. Neurotypical my mom is. But she has just traditionally had this weird thing about not putting on her seatbelt. I don't know what it is. It's,
Did
it's
you
insane.
say she moved here?
No.
From another country?
My grandparents are from Mexico. So she was the youngest. Her oldest sibling was born down in Mexico, but no, she was born and raised here.
Seatbelts aren't as, they're loosey-goosey other places.
Yeah, no. She's been in, she grew up in Los Angeles. She lives out in Moreno Valley now, where I grew up, in the house where I grew up. And she's always had this, actually, I think more of an aversion once it became law. She's like, I don't have to put which is not my mom generally, but I don't know what it is. It's about seatbelts. But anyway, she will actually, it reminded me of it when you said, I'll just get used to writing it over and over again. When she gets in, like every modern car, the thing bings, and she just knows how many bings it is now and counts along with it.
Okay.
Just because she's so used to not putting on her seatbelt. Rather than just put on her seatbelt, she's memorized the amount of bings.
Okay.
Which is one way to deal with things, I guess.
I mean, if she's not driving, I guess she could look away. Like, there's just no way to not see the red. Like, my brain will want the red to go away.
Oh, she knows. She's counting along with it. She's just being stubborn about not putting her seatbelt on.
So in some cars, it goes away, because I'm pretty sure, at least in the Tesla, it will keep the cab of the car open, like, on the screen and show the red.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it shows the red the whole time. It stops beeping eventually. Because, like, I'll be riding in the car with her. And, well, first of all, even, like, my kids are like, Grandma, put your seatbelt on. And
luckily, that's a personal ticket. If you get pulled over, like, you're not getting a ticket.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom is over the age of 16. So
we would hope. Otherwise, time warped real weird in your family.
Or she was born on... Oh, I don't want to do the math on that. Yeah. Yeah, I think that might work out.
Maybe. Yeah. 16 times 4. 64.
Yeah, my mom's over that.
That is not right.
My mom doesn't need me talking about her age on
True. I was right, but you're also right. I was like, wait, I second guessed my math. I gaslit myself internally about it.
My mom has mentally overcome the obstacle put in her way to not put her seatbelt on.
Well, there you go.
Sometimes these things happen.
Yeah. Okay, doke. So if you're fine with it, maybe talking about disclosing in your personal life would be a fun place to start. So what I kind of did is like look at like how to go about approaching the subject. So not just like, how did you do it? Just like kind of what they recommend, or not they, but just, like helpful ideas for this, because I mean, it is now, as a person that is not, unable to use verbal speech and flapping in a corner, people very much so. ADHD they can see. ASD, I at least can see the question mark behind the eyes, So there is facing some of that stuff. So like making the decision to disclose that in multiple settings, for me, I generally always do it because I think I've referenced this before, like congruent to my personality, like those cards are on the table.
Right.
Tact wise, okay, if I was like in some kind of job interview, depending on what that job is, I may or may not.
And it's funny you brought up tact because I was about to say, I was like, I've never found you to be untactful. And then I was like, oh yeah, I'm also the worst judge of what tact is. So,
I would say I'm actually pretty tactful when it comes to like those kinds of things. I would say maybe it's more of like an intuition type situation. Right. Reading the room, which I can do on a certain level with pattern recognition and things, Anyway, so when a person is making a decision to disclose whatever it is, autism, ADHD, whatever neurotype that you subscribe to or resonates, I guess you could say. Well,
I think this might also be like, I know we kind of, and I don't mean to, obviously, but we kind of leave these out a lot. We more focus on ADHD and autism, but I think anxiety and depression also falls very heavily into this category. And at what level and when you would disclose that to somebody.
Yeah. And there's many other things as well. Especially I would imagine in the workplace, depending on the type of job, like dyslexia, dyspraxia, things like that, where it has to do with like how you process numbers or words or reading, like those things might make things difficult in a certain regard. But if there's accommodations in place, then it shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah.
So we'll get there.
Yeah.
But okay, in your personal life, so the first thing that this site suggested is like taking a look at the pros and cons of disclosure. So pros, you may be able to live more authentically. You may feel, basically unmasking, but like it might be easier for you to stim around others, be honest with people when something in the environment is triggering you or causing distress. Likely help you deal with internalized ableism, or at least look at it. Others may turn into great advocates once they understand your neurotype and what it means in your daily life. So like those are all things that could happen that are great.
Yeah, and I think one, and I don't think this was on the list. I think one too is like, especially if we're talking personal life, we're talking about people that you care and feel close to, that you have that added benefit of like, well, you're someone I want you to know who I really am. And, I've said this before about ADHD. For me, one of the biggest misconceptions I had early on was that ADHD was something that I had. And really, ADHD is just part of a way of describing what I am. And so it's kind of letting people know like that part of you and letting them know you as a whole person.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when in interpersonal interactions, I mean, for me, it's really easy for me to say it because as soon as I like give a concrete example from my own personal life, everyone's like, oh yeah, I see that. Like, it is very clear, and it has been very clear since at least 3 years old, I want to say, probably before.
Right.
Even though you can't diagnose a person that young, it,
and you shouldn't, but
if you know, and it was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, unmasking was huge. Like, even like taking risks for me, it pays off because of all the work that I've done to like integrate self-esteem into my daily life and self-love, things like that didn't exist or were, down to almost negative percentages for a really long time. Taking the risk to say it, to people like, and sometimes people surprise you, family members or, friends, might be like, who cares? Or the one that bugs me the most is like, well, why put a label on it? Like, I understand there's a whole mentality behind that, though.
I lose my keys too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people do those things,
Yeah.
but it's like enough of these things occur to get a medical diagnosis is the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Chronically. And, label for me is helpful. And if I didn't have this label, I couldn't get access to the meds, which have been life-changing. All right. So those were just some of like not an exclusive list of pros, but yeah. So then some other considerations on the con side. There's also a possibility you could be misunderstood. May open you up to scrutiny, judgment, and ableist attitudes. May alienate others due to their comfort level with your neurotype. It could people could become critical and dismissive to your struggles. I've experienced that. People may overgeneralize all of your behaviors to your neurotype and be very dismissive about it.
I've had that.
Yeah.
To some extent.
Okay. So these are things to like churn around in your brain, I guess I shouldn't speak for you. I feel like details wise, I probably give more, and I don't know if that's just my personality style or my sense of privacy does not have anything to do with this.
Right.
I feel very comfortable talking about all this stuff, and everyone has a varying level of that.
For sure. And I am that same way. I prefer that people know it about me. It's something I am proud of. I would also add onto the cons list that especially when you tell neurotypical people, you may have a lot of explaining to do, and not even necessarily in a bad way. Yeah. But it's not like telling somebody. I hate to use the phrase coming out because I feel been in this. Yeah. But you're going to have to explain what it is because, a lot of the stuff we talked about last episode with Luann and people have various understandings of it that aren't always accurate. Yeah. A lot of people still believe that ADHD is just something in childhood that goes away. And so like they might be very surprised, like very supportive, but surprised to hear an adult has ADHD and that they recently got diagnosed with it. You
Same with autism / with ASD, having an adult telling you this, people, depending on their, experiences in school or wherever, they may have encountered someone, in a different class, let's say, or that they knew had autism and, behaved in a certain way that was scary to them as a child or something like that, or things that they didn't understand. Right. And then they take all of that and they attribute that, oh, you say you have autism. Okay, well then, taking all of that and like slapping that onto you. And so then, then that's when I guess that alienation might occur, like, oh, this person has autism. Okay, I don't know how to deal with that. But
right.
There's some tips and tricks once we get a little bit.
Well, and I think too, even, maybe this is me being overly optimistic, but I think even people who take it well and who want to be helpful may not know what the best course of action is. I've often said that was one of the things that drew me into Twitter early on. And it's one of the things that I very much enjoy about TikTok now is that, I get to follow a bunch of people who may have things that I don't personally know people who have in real life. So like on TikTok, I follow a bunch of little people. I also follow amputees or people who were, I guess, born without certain body parts. Just because that's not something I have in my life, but that you kind of get that first person point of view from watching that stuff.
You get to hear how a specific group varies in how they speak about it and what the similarities are. And it helps familiarize, you so that when you interact with someone with whatever thing it is you're talking about, like it doesn't make you feel uncomfortable. Because I think the idea of, your internal reaction is your internal reaction, and that's okay, whatever it is, even if, it's not positive, because, with little kids, let's say, that have, let's say, a 3-year-old and they just see someone, let's say without like a finger, like they may be curious. It might freak them out. You never know, so like a certain part of that or a certain level of that probably exists, as we continue into adulthood. It's just we learn what to say and what not to say.
Right. I do remember, just speaking of kids and stuff like that. And you tend to obviously cut kids a little bit of slack. There was this one time I was at Payless shoe stores. I don't even think they exist anymore.
No, they went out of business a few years ago.
Yeah, I was getting my daughter some shoes, I remember. And she wasn't there. Like, we must have been getting them for dance class or something like that. I don't remember. But we're there, me and my wife. And there's also a mom there with her daughter. And then there is a guy there who's very overweight and has his stomach noticeably protruding and kind of sagging down. And so the young girl must not have just seen anything like that before. And she walked by and just went, "Mommy, what happened to his tummy?" And he, thankfully, like, he laughed it off. He was a great sport about it. And he's like, "Yeah, no, it just exploded one day," or did something, something like, oh, the mom was mortified. And I mean, rightfully so. And I get it. But yeah, kids can have that. And that's not an acceptable response for someone our age to have.
No.
But yeah, I remember that when you brought up kids.
I have a funny anecdote. It's only slightly related because it was a client and he was like 13, but it's hysterical. So this person was 13, medium to low support needs. We worked on a lot of stuff in sessions with like idioms, let's say, like, I'm literal, but I do understand some idioms because I have exposure to them. But, it's like, what does dead as a doornail mean? And you'd say a dead door, stuff like that.
Right.
Where it's like, okay, you have to just teach what it's not like you're supposed to understand what this means. It's just like, this is what this means. Right. Let's get this into your vocabulary. Stuff like that. But his mom told me a story one time. They lived in Newport Beach, so, relatively well off. Yeah. And, Kobe Bryant lived down there at the time. I mean, this was, 2008. Okay. But anyway, so there was a pavilions over there that, this family went to, and Kobe Bryant just happened to be there, and he was in the frozen food section. And this guy, this client walks right up to him and was like, "Why are you in the frozen food aisle? Your wife can't cook?" So funny. Anyway, I just love that story because it's, unfortunately, he was a little old in, I would assume, Kobe's estimation, right? Because, this, what? Like, this is weird. I can see that reaction happening, but also just knowing this kid, like... it just cracks me up thinking about it. Anyway, that's the only way it was related. Funny kid story. Yeah. Anyway, and it was short.
And again, not appropriate for adults to do.
Right. And honestly, this kid was 13, so from the receiver's eyes, not appropriate for a 13-year-old to do. Right. But he was generally pretty cool with stuff. Like, back in the day, I also worked at a Coffee Bean right there, and he would come in sometimes, Kobe Bryant, and like, just like chill. Tried to fly it under the radar as much of like a 6'8" person can. Right. Yeah. So, all right. So there's our list of cons. There are more, but it's just like, if you're wondering how to do this with like family members, because, like, ideally everyone has a support system that is, great. Everyone wants to understand. Everyone wants, it doesn't always shake out like that. So like, this can kind of at least prepare you for what might be coming back your way.
Well, and two, I think it's weird going through this as adults because they're, part of the conversation becomes or part of the conversation can become like parents being like, "Well, how did I miss that? Well, that didn't ever seem that weird to me."
Or I do that.
Yeah, or I do that.
Which, well, the apple doesn't fall far.
Right? And so, well, like I didn't know, like when I was going through doing the autism diagnosis, the rather big stem I've talked about on here more than a couple of times now of hitting my shoulders. When they asked my mom if I had any stems, she was like, no, not that I can remember. And I was like, let me remind you of this one. And she felt kind of bad about not remembering that. And I was like, that's not to be a thing that you need to remember about me. But it is kind of, especially with family, people have known you, telling them that you are a certain way. I that can, there's a difference there versus, somebody, like you just got on in a new job and hi, I'm Ronnie. I have ADHD.
Yeah. I mean, when we talk about the workplace stuff, it is interesting. I had a very different reaction to that article versus this one. But I'll save it for then because going back and forth is too much right now. Okay, so they also put in this little note, which is important. It is the neurodivergent person's right to disclose versus other. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say if you're listening to this, you can tell whoever you want. I have ADHD and probably autism. I'll confirm once I get that diagnosis, but I'm pretty sure I'll get it. But I mean, that's me. Also, like, I don't know. I'm not in the habit of just like telling everybody's business all the time. And, it does depend on the context. And, autism, I know people are going to just be like, what? Like, I did tell the friend I went on this trip with, well, I went with two of them, but the other one was working. So we didn't see him that much. But, we talked about that a little bit and he like seemed to understand and get it and see it. Cause like he's seen my like extreme irritation phases and it is funny. It is comical sometimes. I laugh too. I'm just like, why am I freaking the fuck? Like he's seen all that shit, not a surprise, I would say to him. But so
well, and sometimes it is that missing, especially I think if people are a little more familiar with it, which I think more and more people are. That they're like, oh yeah, I get that.
Like when you put two and two together, because like the way that I freak out is funny because it's not just me like masking and I'm feeling terrible inside. Like I genuinely like I do find it funny that I get so mad when we are out of office supplies at work and someone says we're out of paper. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And I'm just like, okay, this is not something to freak. Like this response is definitely not proportionate to what just happened. This shit happens.
So then I take my hands off the person's neck.
It's an internal scream. And this is all happening over IM too. But like everyone involved in that, some of them listen, I think they'll just laugh probably hearing this, like I get unreasonably angry. Now I gave that task to someone else because I just can't deal with it, which is great. I can delegate. But like, it's probably pretty funny to watch it happen. Like what?
I like using that term specifically of I am unreasonably angry right now. I think that is the kind of thing that it helps when people know that you have a neurodivergence, in my case, ADHD. But I'm like, when I have, and it's something you kind of got to train yourself to be able to let go that disclaimer of like, I know this isn't a big deal. This is making me unreasonably angry and I need to leave this situation. And people get it. And like sometimes.
Well, in my situations, it has worked out fine.
I would say more often than not. I've had a few occasions where not like somebody's physically stopped me, but they're like, what the fuck's that guy's problem?
Yeah.
When I just explained to you what the fuck this guy's problem was.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I know there's that thing of like, sometimes people laugh along so that they don't. But that's really not what's happening for me. I find my freakouts also funny, like almost immediately, or even like bird's eye view as it's happening. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, why is this so big? But it does feel like this internal scream that I can't stop.
Yeah.
and I can't. Yeah,
it is weird when that happens, when the funny comes on, but it does not negate the anger.
Right.
And then
I'm laugh crying.
Yeah. Well, and that's the point where it does start laugh crying. Not even because either emotion is that strong, though they're both pretty strong, of like, no, there's, this just becomes 2-in-1 conditioner at one point. It's not doing either one very well.
It's like, logically, I can see that this is fucking ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And yet here I go. I cannot. The floodgates are open. I don't know. Watching it all burn.
It does become that like, you know what? I just need to take the bomb away from the people right now. Mm-hmm. I need to crash this plane into a river.
Yeah.
Get away from me.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And in my personal life, I think it probably affected people more often, especially when I didn't know what was going on for myself. ADHD was not on the table until a year ago. Mm-hmm. And I know, and I'm not proud of it, but like, I think my moods could control a family room at times. Mm-hmm. And not that was my intention, but I mean, I come from a group of non-confrontational German people. So like the stereotype, right, is like stoicism, don't talk directly about it. Mm-hmm. There's some guilt there. But like,
what would Germans have to be guilty about?
Oh God. Even that, I get the cringe down the spine.
That's coming from a man with the last name Ursenbach,
right? Yeah. So that used to happen quite a bit. So I don't know how my family would describe this phenomenon. Now I can talk about it in real time. So I think that tension may have eased, but I think previously. Mm-hmm. It might not have gone so funny or smooth or whatever, and I really I can talk like I am very passionate about whatever it is I'm talking about. That does not mean that I cannot hear other people. It's just how I talk sometimes. Mm-hmm. But I do also think that used to shut down family specifically, and probably friends, and probably others. I just can't think of it because I wasn't attending to it.
No, and to your point, I will say this. I had a very hard time judging severity. So I was known for not this was the main thing people knew about me, but it was a fact that I was not happy was associated with me, and I had to work on for a lot of years. But me and my friends would go back and forth, and I just didn't have, it's that whole thing of like, metaphorically, my friends would fire off a shot. I'd fire off a shot. They'd fire off another shot, and then I'd fire off a bazooka. And,
I would do that too.
And just like, it was like, well, that was too far. And I was like, but we were doing the thing. And it's like, well, that is a little too much. And so, and other stuff comes into that. Part of that is, not a survival instinct, but like part of it is defensive.
Winning the game.
Yeah. Winning. Yeah. Part of it is wanting to win the game. Part of it is, reflecting against some actual hurt that might've just come by, a thing. But yeah, it was, I began realizing that some of my backfires were too much.
Yeah.
And so that's something I had to really reel in. And at a certain point, mostly realize of like, well, Ronnie, you just can't really play that game much anymore. Cause it comes down to the people, you're going to hurt people you care about. Not like deeply, not that they're not going to be able to sleep at night, but they're going to be like, dude, what the fuck?
I mean, it would decrease the likelihood that they were going to want to hang out with you.
Yeah. And so I was like, or, you just kind of let things slide. And so that's what I more aim to do. I'm not perfect about it. But I think I'm better at it. Yeah. Also, I think part of that whole, solely talking through insults, I'm hoping part of it is in other groups too, that just kind of fades with age.
Yeah, I mean, when you were saying all of that, like, it reminded me of like me and my best friend Natalie in high school. We used to call it the hate game, but it wasn't like a game. We would just like shoot insults kind of back and forth, and then I would always take it too far, and I didn't get it. I didn't get it either. And she would just be like, "I hate the hate game," and I'm like, "Oh, sorry,
sorry, you pussy." No, I'm kidding. I know it's your favorite word. I'm sorry.
But I'm sure that's what a teenage boy in 1999 would say. Yeah. So I knew, okay, like, it's not that all of the friends around me always had. I always used to think like, man, like a lot of my friends are just very like emotional, but I think it's just they have a bigger range of emotion than me.
Right.
And my skin is super thick. Like, once in a while, I could be sensitive with like certain people saying certain things. And, you know, there are key people where, like, you know, I really cared what, you know, immediate, like my parents thought, or, you know, like you know, stuff like that.
Right.
But there were very few, I mean, I was a people pleaser, but like also, I mean, I don't know. I just didn't get offended easily. I still don't.
Right.
I just don't have, it's not even about effort for me. It's just like either the shit doesn't register or I literally just don't care.
Right. Well, and that's good for you. I very much get, I am an overthinker and I have rejection sensitivity disorder.
Is it
dysmorphia or disorder?
I think it's disorder because dysmorphia doesn't sound right.
Yeah. Rejection sensitivity. But honestly, I think that is, and this is, sorry, these are all thoughts coming to my head right now. I think that
why? Is it because you have ADHD?
Yeah. That is more in the moment. I think that is more for stuff that is like, oh, I think that person hates me. I think if someone just comes out and says, fuck you, that doesn't affect the rejection sensitivity disorder as much.
Right. It's guessing.
And even then, I become more upset that I hurt my friend that they had to say that.
Never even thought about that.
Yeah, because I love my friends. And I know you don't. No,
I sure don't. Sorry, friends. I don't love you. I like you a lot, though. I love you. Just not amorously.
Yeah.
Why would I do that?
But yeah, no, of like, I don't want to be a person that hurts their friends. And so, I guess even there, just that it does play differently. And that was going to say, I wonder, being neurodivergent and now understanding your aero-aceness, or coming to understand that.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of the hate game was kind of, wasn't that you had less feelings or less emotions, but you guys were playing in different ballparks without knowing.
Probably.
Like that you were dealing with a whole bunch of misunderstandings about where everybody else was in their growing up, and other people were in, the typical raging hormones and other things going on. And so
that's a good point. One of the indicators, I think it was the ACE stuff that I was reading. One of the indicators is like having a fear or like, oh, am I gay? Like, is that what it is? And like, I remember thinking a lot about that in 6th grade, and it had nothing to do with attraction to females, but it was just like, what if that's it? Like, I don't want it to be it. It doesn't seem right, but this other thing doesn't seem right either. And as far as I knew back then, it was one or the other, and neither seemed great. I mean, as I said, I can develop crushes on dudes, but that's as far as it needs to go. As soon as it's reciprocated in any way, I'm like, fuck you, get out of here. You've ruined everything.
Sorry, Jason Momoa.
Sorry, Jason Momoa. If you develop a crush on me, don't ever tell me. Let it be your little secret. But don't kiss me back.
You just accept this kiss.
Take my kiss and Or don't, actually.
Listen here,
watch, but I
Aquaman.
hope you watch this podcast.
I also hope Jason Momoa watches this podcast.
That'll be a fun day.
You know what? Any of the Justice League is welcome to watch this podcast.
I don't know anyone else.
There's different people. It's fine. Ben Affleck, he's on the Justice League. He's Batman.
Oh.
And I think a good Batman. Gal Gadot, Wonder Woman. Other people.
I mean, I watched that Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman situation years ago. I just not.
Yeah, no,
it's not my thing.
Yeah, not your world.
No. Yeah. Anyway, I forget all of that. Somehow we started talking about comic books. No, we didn't. We talked about movies. Ace, Arrow, da-da-da. Oh, yeah. So that fear.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it wasn't
Brian,
like oh, no, I'm going home and thinking about this. Like, literally, my genitals were never pumping.
Uh-huh.
It was just like, looking back now through this lens, it's like, oh, I was trying to figure out what the fuck was happening.
Right.
And compared to what my friends were saying, definitely not experienced. So I had like church friends and school friends, and mostly no overlap. The school friends were all talking about guys and doing stuff with guys, and I was just like, but I'm 12. And also, like, that sounds scary, and that's illegal in my religion, and it also seems really freaky and weird, and I want nothing to do with that. Partially, I think that is age related. Like,
yeah,
I was emotionally mature, but not exposed to any of that stuff. So, like, it was like all shock to me.
Yeah, well, and
that people talked about it.
That's something I have learned from having my own kids. As personally where I learned it, not where everybody has to. I hate parents who are like, well, when you have kids, you'll understand this. And it's like, you don't need to be a parent.
Well, then I'll never understand anything.
Yeah. This is just personally where it came to me the most, is that, like, kind of the umbrella term of mature. Like I have my daughter who is very mature in some ways way too mature, and in some ways not nearly mature enough. That maturity, isn't an umbrella term for a human. So you could have been very mature in a lot of ways, and then, regular or not as mature in other areas of life. Maturity doesn't work as a blanket statement.
Right. And I don't even know if it was like emotional maturity, but it was just like, I conducted myself in a very, professional is not the right, but like adult almost way.
Once you use the word conducted myself.
I mean,
was it good?
My natural language is very scientific. it's not even masking. It's like, I can't subject people to that.
I wasn't expecting, like, I conducted myself in a very flip-floppy way.
Right. No, I definitely was very adult-like, not only in stature, but conversationally at that point. And yeah, anyway. Yeah. I mean, I was 5'6" in 6th grade. I was 6 feet tall in 8th grade, and I haven't grown since. It's just been me for a long time, very tall. Height actually has a lot to do with how people treat you. Like, teenagers are treated like adults, and they really shouldn't be, because, like, developmentally they are not. But, like, when you see a person that looks full grown, like, you just slap all the expectations of a 25-year-old onto, like, a 16-year-old, which not appropriate in any way. I'm not talking just like having sex with a 16-year-old. I'm talking about like emotional maturity, the prefrontal cortex, which is, impulse control, all that shit, like, not even close to being done.
Right.
Cooking. Like, there's a lot there, which is for another time.
No, it's because that's something, and I know I think this is an area where probably it's going to be a Venn diagram because of affected differently by gender, which mean you are different genders. We are. In case you hadn't noticed.
I did.
I am very pretty, but no,
I'm very gentlemanly.
You are. You're but no, I too was a tall kid, and it is I swear to God, I mean, now it's not so much. I also looked older at a very young age. And so, like, I remember, like, one of my first jobs, I was out on my smoke break and I was talking with somebody else. And we were talking back and forth, and she was like, "Oh, I have a son about your age." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool. How old is he?" And she's like 30. And I was like, "Oh." And she's like, "How old are you?" And I was like, I'm 23.
Oh.
And she's like, "Oh, sorry." I never forget that response of just, "Oh, sorry." Like nothing else is,
Yeah.
and, but yeah, I always looked old. I feel like I look around I don't look 47 now. I hope I don't look 47.
Age is hard to tell
Yeah.
now because there are some people that I've known since I was in high school that definitely look way older than me.
Mm-hmm.
I also know that now that height is not really part of the factor. I look younger than 40. I do know this.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone that I say usually is like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah." It makes me laugh.
I am the absolute worst about judging age. It is like I've just never, like, you say you look younger than 40. I believe you. I happen to know you're 40, so
Right.
It's just.
That's
I
how-
also, oddly enough, this has been a weird one, and I think I've broken it as I've grown older, but especially around my teenage years, I had like the reverse problem that people that were older than me, in my head, I made taller than me.
Me too.
But like, especially when I was in high school, that wasn't many people that were actually taller than me. So like, I had like my friend Jay, his older brother Josh, also a good friend of mine. And Josh is not a tall guy. I don't know how tall he is, but we'd put him at under average height for
5'9"?
an adult male. Yeah, we'll call it 5'9", 5'8", somewhere around there. I don't know. And then I am 6'2", so I am above average height. But like, and a good amount taller than Josh. But like, because I grew up of him being my friend's older brother, who at the time, he's only 5 years older than me, which at the time is a huge difference. Now, who gives a fuck?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like forever, I was like, Josh is taller than me. And I'm like, no, he's not even close, not by a long shot.
Yeah.
But it's weird how those age and tallness interact like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm taller than everyone almost all the time, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm just used to it. And now I like it.
Yeah.
Because I can look down on everyone
Nice.
and no one can say shit.
Mm.
Okay. All right.
They can say shit, you just can't hear it all the way
I
up
can't
there.
hear it. It's a different elevation. Okay. So it is the nerdy person's right to disclose all that,
Mhm.
blah, 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 blah. So a couple things to kind of note. Okay. So you've moved through the pros and cons. Kind of like know your audience and prepare yourself. So like talking to your parents, depending on how that parent has supported you in the past. So any way that a person
Right.
has treated you up until that point is a good indicator of how they are going to receive this information. So if they have a history of being supportive and saying, like, tell me more about your baseball or whatever it is that you do. And then the likelihood that they will be like, okay, well, tell me about this, the more accepting and supportive they could be. It's
Right.
not a given, but based on historical behavior, it's a good chance that they will be supportive.
And I would also say this, one of the things to look out for is, and something, I'll cut this out if I'm talking out of school, but I believe you've said this on the podcast before, that you think that your dad may have.
Oh, you can leave it in. He knows well.
Yeah. But like a lot of times it is, it does run in families.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and that is how a fair amount of people have found out about it. They've taken their son or daughter and gotten tested. And it's like, what do you mean they have ADHD? What do you mean they have autism? I do all those same things. And they're like, So you may have that experience with a parent too, that that rightfully says, I have all those same things that happens to me. But they draw the wrong conclusion from that.
Yeah, right. No, like my dad already is well aware of his stuff. I mean, when I told my parents about the ADHD things, they were not surprised. I mean, they experienced me as a child.
Right.
And I think that there was less judgment in general from them about all of that stuff. And my mom, I mean, I don't have a lot of patience either. I wouldn't say that she's full of patience, but I do think that she could see like my true self was very curious and like doing all these things that might drive a parent crazy. Like she said that one time, like when I was 3, we were living in Santa Clara in a duplex. Why you need to know that, I don't know. She had a daycare little situation in the house, and it was nap time, and for whatever reason I had to like go nap in her room. I was never a napper. It was go spend some time alone, I need you to go away kind of thing. And she said that I like went through all of her stuff, picked apart her deodorant. I got into I don't remember her ever having perfume, but apparently she had some out.
Yeah, it's because you ruined it all.
I did. She never replenished. I just got into everything, and she said she couldn't even get mad. Like she just knew I was so curious about those things and not tired. Which I could see myself freaking the fuck out. I've freaked out about a lot less with my cats, and I know like they don't speak English. They don't actually know rules. So anything that gets left out, that's ultimately my fault.
But also, you can say fucked up shit to your cat, and by the same rules, they don't understand it.
Right.
I could say to my cat of like, I fucking wish you were never born. That's a horrible thing to say to your children.
For sure.
And absolutely not true. First of all, I don't wish my kids were never born. I love my kids more than anything.
Yeah.
Second of all, I don't wish my cat was never born.
Right.
That cat is very close, maybe like second on the list.
Right. Yeah. But like, I don't even, but the way that she described it, it was not like she was even angry. It was just like, well, there she did that.
Yeah.
She just was really curious about stuff. So I do know that like that probably helped buffer a lot of situations that could have gone awry for me.
Yeah. I was going to say it kind of reminds me of just dealing with my son and my daughter, the younger ones, because my son has autism, and my daughter, she's also the older between the two of them. And so she will do things that aren't technically breaking the rules, but that will upset him. And then he will break the rules and, do something he's not supposed to, hit or throw something or da-da-da. And then he gets in trouble. But then I have to talk to her, and it's like, look, you did it once. That happens. But at a certain point, you're shaking a soda can and then getting upset that it exploded at you. And I think that kind of maybe what it was going through your mom's mind. Or it sounds like what was going through your mom's mind of like, well, I did shake the soda can. I did leave the child that I know is restless alone in here. And she did the thing that she does. I can't be that mad at it.
Yeah.
At least the first time.
Right. Yeah. And I heard no subsequent stories because I don't remember doing this.
Obviously,
but I mean, I have memories from when I was 3. I remember a lot of things, whether they were the actual things that happened or whatever account of it. But
remembering it.
Yes. Anyway, yeah. So in my situation, my parents were very supportive. Good. All of it, like ASD, they were like, okay, because I just threw it in there as like an aside, because this also was the conversation where I came out to them as Arrow and Ace, and that was an interesting conversation. They were very supportive.
You came out with ADHD and Arrow Ace at the same time?
Not ADHD, because they already knew that was the assessments were happening and stuff. I threw autism in there at the end of that conversation because I was like, well, I'm spilling shit. Might as well just like empty the cup.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did. And they were very like, okay, great, very, supportive. And I knew it would go that way because, like, I mean, our family with stuff is non-confrontational. So my brother never actually came out to them. It was more of like they asked because someone was like asked if he was because of the way they were talking about him or something, like, and they were like, oh, and so that's kind of how and that was, my brother in his mid-30s, and it wasn't like he was hiding it. Like they lived together in Japan with one bed, like it was, you could see it.
Just like, you're gay? Does your boyfriend know that you're gay?
Right. So like, and they handled all of that great. So I knew, I don't know. They were a lot more conservative back when I was a kid. So like, if all of this stuff was coming out in teen years, it may have gone differently, but also maybe not. I have no idea. There's no way to know. And there's why guess, but like, all I know is like now, like that conversation with them went as I thought it would, which was supportive because of, you know, the history of supporting my brother and, you know, my brother just got married this year in their living room. Like, you know, there's a lot of that. So I knew that this wasn't going to be a problem for them or a thing where they're just like questioning everything I'm saying about it, you know, and, you know, to a certain level, I do understand why people question the arrow thing specifically. Ace, I mean, it's harder for someone to disprove mentally, you know, like I don't know if you're just tuning in now, like my version or the way I experience being asexual is, you know, sex neutral, you know, situations called for it before, not opposed to it, never have asked for it.
Right.
But it's kind of like, okay, well, when you go get your nails done, you know, they got to file your nails. You know, there's I could do it. You know, I could do all the things. Everything works. But I would prefer not to. Right. But it's part of getting your nails done. So as sex is part of being in a relationship romantically, or we're not.
And it's an important distinction to make because, and you're obviously the expert here, but.
I don't know, but
I mean, between me and you,
sure.
But ace people, there are people that are sex repulsed.
Yes.
But also, and I think that that's a common misconception amongst people.
Some asexual people have libido and masturbate too, and that's
and some asexual people, specifically those that maybe aren't aromantic, they have sex with their partners because. They don't mind it that much, and their partner it's like, you know, it's like somebody else getting to pick the movie or something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly how it felt. It wasn't like I never understood how sex is something that emotionally draws people to each other and connects them. That never made sense to me. Also, I had a point and I lost it. I don't know. Understanding that sex is something that is very important to people. I was never able to, you know, people say that they like lose themselves and it gets all like, I think carnal may be too harsh of a word, but just very like, super into it and you just lose yourself for a little bit. And I haven't really lost myself in anything. That as well. Like all of the things have gone up and down and I've experienced those things, but it wasn't to I was just like, okay, well, that's the thing that happened. That was kind of cool, but
yeah.
I don't know. Like, fine. Whatever.
Woohoo.
I hope you're happy. I mean, I don't know. It wasn't like that. I mean, I don't know. It's hard. It's just hard. It's weird to say. Not weird to say. It's just like interesting to like look back on all of those interactions because it definitely was all there. But I also was, you know, again, I'm not repulsed. I'm just like neutral. Yeah. You know, if this is very important to someone else, like in a caring relationship, people do things that they wouldn't normally do, right? Because they care for this other person. So that makes sense transactionally for me. Yeah. You know, and if I was not aromantic, then I probably would continue to do sex. Because
and do sex well.
Yeah. But I don't have to. Yeah. And it feels so great. You know, because like masturbation is not the thing. Although before I knew about all this stuff, I was like, God, I guess I've just never found my thing. You know, gotta keep trying. Because like I definitely am a type of person that is like, if someone complains about something but they haven't done it right, and not because they need an accommodation or whatever, it's just they haven't done it right, I fucking hate it. And so I think that was kind of like the mentality I was subscribing to with relationships and with sex. I mean, I gave it a good fucking faith effort so many times. Parents at earmuffs, like probably outside of marriage when I was married, I don't know, hundreds, like just trying to figure it out. Like the first thing.
And just for clarification, people or times?
I don't know.
Okay. I mean, hundreds of people are hundreds of times. Oh, okay, cool.
I don't know. Probably both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I wasn't a huge relationship person until I met my ex-husband, and then I mean, everything just kind of like petered out big time for me within the first few weeks. And then really to the point where I couldn't ignore it after like the longest 12 weeks, 3 months. And I was always just like, oh, I'm just seeing all these red flags. That's healthy. Why is this weird? I'm not a commitment phobe. I'm committed to other things. Like, anyway, that's how I thought about it before. But I just never understood like how that connected people, how, like the thing that people would often say is just like how into it they would get. And I was just like, oh, I guess I'm just not doing it right. Or I'm not finding the thing that is for me. Right. Or whatever. So I just kept doing the research, hoping for a different result. Never happened. So I don't know. It's interesting to think of it like that though. Just a relief to get out of that whole thing.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Like, and it's a mental thing because even like up until like a month ago, I was like, God, there's going to be a point where everyone says I'm going to want to get in a relationship again. I don't see why. I'm so happy now, but they must be right.
That's so weird. And so like, I don't know. Because first of all, I imagine that is unsolicited advice that they're giving you right off the top.
Yeah. When I say I'm so happy and I'm living alone, it'll be okay. You'll find someone. I'm like, no, that sounds bad.
Did you not hear the first sentence where I am so happy?
Yeah.
That's people are ridiculous in that sense of and it's so weird for people who I was going to say should care for you. I'm sure do care for you and care for you in many cases deeply. Where they just gloss over the I am very happy right now part.
Well, it's like, you think you're happy, but you're probably just saying you're happy because you're alone. Like, I feel like that's what some people say, but I don't really know that. It's just what I guess. You know, I do think it's coming from a good place. It's just like they can't imagine the place that I'm in, whereas I can't imagine being happy living with someone else, especially romantically. Like, that just all sounds terrible. And then looking back at any relationship that I had, I could say miserable in most respects, most of the time in all of them. Looking back, I probably wouldn't have said it that way before. Probably the first year or two of being with my ex-husband, I probably would definitely not have said that. But that is for another time. Like, there's a lot that goes into that. But I will attribute autism specifically, and that rigid adherence to rules that I have, especially my own, so the rule in my head was like, you're not doing this right, or this is the expectation and this is what people need to do. So you just have to keep trying until you find it. And I think that is where ESD comes in. That is not ADHD to me. For me, that's not how it feels. So like that kind of like, okay, like this is a thing. Everybody wants love. This is what they say. Like, you know, I have to keep trying this out until I find the right thing, even though this entire thing is torture. Even if I'm talking about how, you know, it's exciting to meet a new person, period, you know, for 2 or 3 weeks, you know, talking about them, thinking about them, whatever. But then that drops off so fast. And then I give way too much, what is the word? Loyalty or too much commitment right away. As far as like, well, I'm not so into this, but now it's beyond the point where I could ghost, because I liked to ghost in the past a lot. Because I'm like, I don't know you. I don't owe you anything. Like, why do I need to tell you this? Like, things fizzle. I don't feel, if I saw you one time, why do I need to give you any closure? We had nothing. This makes no sense to me. Like, but some people are like, no, you got to tell them. And I'm like, why? This person is no one to me. Like, there's someone to someone else, you know? Like, this makes no sense. I was a huge ghoster, also non-confrontational, which now I will do.
Now you will do what?
Confrontation.
Oh, gotcha.
Anyway, this was a huge tangent into not disclosing neurotype, but I do think...
Yeah, important.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's interesting to talk about, and I think I don't honestly really have a forum where I can talk about it for very long with understanding ears in my face, if that makes sense. Because people always look at me like, huh?
Yeah.
Like, and that look, like, I know that this look, like, confused, if you're listening only, kind of like a weird, like, confused, like a furrow of the brow and like a weird snarl.
For the record, you made a noise that I think perfectly represented the face you made. When you did.
Oh, good.
It's kind of a.
Yeah.
Mine was a little more Tim the Toolman Taylor, but yeah.
Yeah. People that aren't primed for it or know about it. And ashamed to say, I probably would have been one of them 6 months ago. Well, maybe not. Maybe like 2 years ago. Like, now, tell me about yourself. Who am I? I don't know you. Everyone is so different. Like, how can I truly understand where you're coming from unless you tell me? I can make certain assumptions, but those are mine.
Yeah. Well, and two, that's the thing. I think, like we've talked about before, until somebody repeatedly and obviously proves me wrong, I like to take people at their word for who they are, because I am really not a fan of what do you call it, like armchair psychiatry or whatever of people kind of like, well, this person's like this because of this, like kind of this. And, there are, obviously professionals and other people and train people that you can go to with that purpose. But just kind of doing it to people who didn't ask for it. Something about that feels a little ick to me that I don't really love. But yeah, I think that, I also don't know every experience in the world. I also don't know of every experience in the world.
Yeah.
And I find it is so much more illuminating and makes my world so much bigger and brighter. That, and like I said, I not many, but I have a couple of other ace friends. I don't know that I have any arrow friends though, besides you. But it makes my word brighter and better to know your stories and hear your point of views and expand the way that people can experience, this very short life that we have. And so I really kind of don't like when people go, well, that doesn't line up with what I believe, so I'm going to box you into this, or I'm going to say that you don't understand this about yourself.
Have you been in my ex-husband's mind? Because that is what happened to me over the course of years and years, which is how I'll share that story another time. But that's how I got into a space that, anyway.
Yeah. And no, I like hearing different people's way they go through life.
Yeah.
And
same.
I think that's way better than just, even if I don't understand it, especially at first, because a lot of things you don't understand at first.
But it doesn't mean that you're stupid.
No.
Like, I feel like that is kind of their reaction. If something doesn't align with the person's worldview,
right,
automatically you're attacking them, which makes no sense. Because how like, if you think you know it all, that is scary. There's literally no way. There's no way.
No. Well, I was gonna say it's one of those things it's a parallel. It's not the same thing, but I think I mentioned maybe for the first time last week that most people know this about me. I don't drink or do drugs or anything like that. Specifically when I say I don't drink, and to some extent when I say I don't do drugs, people usually, more often than they should, will then explain why they do drink. And I was like, I'm not against drinking. I mean, obviously don't drink and drive. I'm against drinking and going home and beating your kids or whatever. But like,
and that can be done without alcohol. No, equally as bad.
And I do believe that people who have a problem with alcohol deserve help and compassion. But I obviously don't believe everybody who drinks has a problem with alcohol. I don't believe everybody who does drugs has a problem with drugs. But people feel compelled to defend themselves in front of me when I say I don't drink and I don't do drugs.
That's all self-judgment.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like, I mean, I do think that the people that react that way may have been told that they have an issue, or they think they do anyway. So like they may be saying that stuff out loud to convince themselves.
Yeah.
Or in some weird way trying to make it so that you don't feel weird.
Yeah.
On misunderstanding the whole point, but still.
Right. And so it then just goes to a awkward point in the conversation, which is, talking with me, there's no shortage of awkward parts of conversations.
Right.
But yeah, it is kind of a weird thing that is kind of parallel to that.
Yeah. I
remember
playing, I think we did talk about this last week, and you said you teetotaled, and I said, even alcohol? And you said, yeah. And I said, okay. And then I just moved on. Cause now, and maybe I reacted that way too, because right now alcohol is not important in my life. And it was, it's like a social thing that, my parents started doing when I was in high school. There was a lot of teetotaling happening on my dad's part specifically.
You must
for a
have been
long
a
time.
hard teenager. No.
Yeah.
Right.
I really broke them.
I don't know why. In high school, they just started drinking like a lot.
Right. Not even, but just like they like their wine. My family, like when I go see my family, like drink wine every day or whatever. But
hey.
But like for me, I realized after I started taking medication for ADHD, part of the reason I really enjoyed alcohol, I think, is because there was a certain point, and it was post-buzz, pre-drunk, where I could access my full brain and I could quickly activate and get a bunch of shit out. And that's when I would have these weird, like, work epiphanies that I'd have to write them down, like weird, like I guess not weird now that I'm looking back.
Right.
It was serving that purpose that now Adderall can do for me reliably and safely.
Right. Without the guesswork.
Right. And having to like just guess on the cocktail, literally.
Well, also, I imagine also in the correct situation.
Right.
You weren't like, I got to do my nanny work today, so I'll just get somewhere between buzzed and bull.
Yeah, no, this was always like on my own time at home, but just like having, okay, I need to do this at work tomorrow. Okay, I got to do that. Okay, I got it. It was like all of a sudden, all the lists that I have and stuff, it would all just like activate super fast. And so now that I have something that helps me do that, I don't need to do that as much. Like over the weekend, like on Friday when we got there, I did drink, but it had been like the third time this year.
Right.
Which I would never have been able to have counted last year. Any time in my life.
Right.
I did not drink until I was 21 because I am a rule follower. But I mean, I really enjoyed alcohol for a lot of reasons.
I will say that I mentioned I have an occasional cigar now, but I used to be a regular cigarette smoker and a regular vapor for a long time. But like I didn't start smoking until I was at the time the law was 18.
That is a recent law.
Yeah, but I think my birthday is in January. I don't know if you know that. But I think like I started smoking in November of me being 17.
Because you had to be out of high school.
No, I was still in high school when I started smoking.
Oh, you were 17.
Yeah.
I see. That's what you said. I heard that and didn't.
So like
register.
I did technically break the law, but not by much. I wasn't, my aunt told stories of, she started smoking when she was 12, and that's, an older generation. But I wasn't one of I wasn't, I was like you, it's the rule thing. And so like, even when I started smoking, it was a tad bit early, but only by a tad.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so like rules and stuff around all of those things, but yeah, like it's just not part of my daily life, and I don't miss it, which I don't have a physical dependence thing, which is lucky because some people do, and I don't think it's something you can control. So I'm just lucky.
Yeah. Well, and I know like that was kind of the point for me why I quit smoking cigarettes and why, more important, why I quit vaping. Because I moved from cigarettes to vaping because it was just it's healthier or less unhealthy. I don't really think. I know there people argue against the vape all the time, and you know what? I'll grant you. Maybe it's. I'm not arguing it's 100%.
I mean, if you have to pick one or the other, or you're dead, I would pick vaping. If you had to do it every day,
yeah, it is by far. Let me put it to you this way: if you were going to bet on which you're going to live longer on, the far safer bet is vaping.
Yeah.
And so like I did that for that, and you know that immediately came with some health upgrades. I was not hawking up gross shit from my lungs every morning. Things like the smell, things like I could do it inside. I felt like I had just hours of my day because I didn't have to walk outside or take a break every time I needed to smoke. But then eventually, I legitimately enjoy tobacco. And so like at a certain point I was like, this is all habitual now. And like, I don't enjoy this anymore. And so that's when it became time for me. I was like, I need to quit this.
Yeah.
And it's breaking a habit, regardless of what kind of brain you have, once you get into it. And once that's been a part of your life for so long, but like, you know, not to be all, you know, house clean about, none of it was sparking joy anymore. I wasn't getting that great sensation anymore. And you know, then that's one of the reasons. And I honestly, I didn't have a cigar for probably a couple of years after I quit vaping. But like now, because I don't do those every day, and that is something that gives me joy, and not healthy, but also not a daily occurrence. I've never smoked more than one in a day. So get off my ass, Annie. I'll just smoke if I want to.
You know, it sounds like you got some shit to work out, Ronnie. I've literally done nothing but this.
I know. But no, it is that way with things sometimes.
Yeah, it is.
And I think as interesting as our various dealings with trying to get off of things are, I think it's probably about time we put a pin in it for this week.
Yeah.
And then make it a two-parter, and we'll come back and get down to the rest of those beautiful things on that piece of paper of yours, that magical
that multiple piece of paper.
I know those pieces of paper.
Look at this, everyone. Yeah. I like to write things out, and I love a good extra fine pen. Okay. Yeah. So if you liked that sentence or anything else you heard tonight.
If you like any one of our sentences.
You may not be listening to this at night. Yeah. I just realized that when I heard that last time.
But we still said it tonight.
We did say it tonight, but whenever you're hearing this, if you liked any of it, please like and subscribe if you feel so inclined, and we hope you do. Please leave a 5-star review. I am Dr. Seuss. Did you hear that? I just rhymed. I don't like poetry, but I do like rhyming.
Well, I have bad news. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, really scared. If you also feel so inclined, our Patreon is live. Just go search Inner Moxie Pod on patreon.com. I think it is, because I don't know how to do stuff like this.
It's patreon.gov. It's no.
.org. Yeah, it's nonprofit. Also, if you want to follow us on TikTok or Instagram, we're at InnerMoxiePod. If you would like to email us some very specific thoughts that are too long for a DM somehow or something like that, you can email us at myinnermoxiepod@gmail.com.
Also, that's a little more private. So if you want to give us some private thoughts, you know, it sounded weird, but I'm going to stick with it.
Stick with it. Stick with your privates.
If you want, I'll read through the weird emails.
I like readings. I like reading. I like printing out and reading, highlighting. Well, maybe you won't email us.
If you want Zanny to highlight your email,
send us study and analyze your emails and compare it and try to find themes across multiple emails and hear the results of my research. And if I've not already bored you to death, you can also follow me on Instagram personally at Zanism, ZANNISM. I am a religion and a disease. Mic drop.
Please don't drop the mics. No.
Okay, they're attached.
Yes. If you would like to hear more of me, I am on all the social medias, but I'm most active on TikTok, dropping out little fun factoids, so you can find me there. Also, at Band Ronnie, or yes, Also at Band Ronnie. And also, you can listen to my other podcast, the Band Media Podcast.
You can.
You
tell
can.
some
and
friends.
Please do. Yes. And also tell a friend. But
four.
only about my pod. No. About both podcasts.
Don't listen to him right now. Yeah. Just kidding. That was dismissive and rude.
Not really.
Sorry.
I was being dismissive and rude of the podcast we're literally working on together at this moment. True. Or I think it was a fine retaliation.
Okay. You're fine with the hate game?
I am.
All right.
I guess until I'm not. We'll see.
Well,
one day I'll start crying and then we can stop.
Okay. Well, in that case, stay fresh, cheese bags. Bye.
Later.